Hot takes, insider info, intriguing interviews, we have it all here for you. You're listening to the Green Machine Podcast.
Connor Wilson for three in the corner, bottom.
Gets up and rises up like a salmon.
You're listening to the Green Machine Podcast with Kyle and Micah.
Hey guys, it is late Thursday night. We're here at another episode of the Green Machine Podcast here with Ty and former UVU men's basketball player Ben Aird. Ben was actually a member of the only WAC championship team in Utah Valley history so far. How are we doing tonight, guys?
Doing great. Can't complain, that's for sure. Just trapped inside due to the coronavirus, but other than that, we're doing good.
Nice.
Exactly what Ben said. Trapped inside. NFL draft is tonight, so a little bit of relief. We got some sports finally, so it's been fun to track that and kind of predict who's going to draft who. So that's been fun.
Pretty unprecedented that it's being done all online basically because of this, coronavirus stuff. Tonight we wanted to talk and reminisce a little bit about that championship year, 2013-14. The first year in the WAC for Utah Valley. I don't think anybody, maybe you guys did in the locker room, but anybody outside the locker room didn't see that coming. So tell us a little bit about what the expectation for you guys was coming into that season.
Hey, look, like any good championship team, that mindset started at the beginning of the season for us, but I think you're spot on that nobody else thought that, right? We were kind of the unknown, right? We were the new team, the newcomer in the WAC, and I think everyone expected New Mexico State to run away with it, which a lot of years that is the expectation, right? And so, but we kind of had the team that liked being under the radar, the underdog kind of guys, and we played to that a lot, and we're able to have something really special come from it.
I don't know how to word this. How did you guys do it? What was the biggest key to maybe having that success and shocking the world, I guess you could say?
Yeah, I don't think championships are just won overnight in any sport at any level, right? And so it was something that had built up for some time, particularly at Utah Valley. We had 4 seniors that we had all been together for at least 3 years, and Holton and I had been together for 4 years. We had, played for Coach Hunsaker for that entire time. So we had that chemistry, that bond that was built over several years with a lot of the different players on that team. And I think we just had that mentality going in at the beginning of the season that we wanted to do something special. And so, when you look at any championship team, and that team particularly, I think there was a few key things that helped us achieve that success. One, we had an unbelievable coaching staff. Dick Hunsaker, when it comes to X's and O's, I think he's as good as anyone in the country in terms of being a coach. And we really bought in and believed in his system. And the second is team chemistry. We weren't the most athletic or the most talented team in the WAC or even in the country, is particularly in the WAC, but we bought into the system and we all played hard. And we had that chemistry. We had 5 or 6 guys that averaged close to or double digits. And so we were just a team-oriented, bought-in, hungry to prove ourselves group of guys. And when you put that together with a leader like Dick Hunsaker, we were able to achieve success, right, by winning the WAC.
Yeah. So what did winning the WAC mean for you guys? Not only you seniors, you had a few rough seasons there, kind of an up and down time, but you make that jump into the WAC and you win the whole thing. What did that mean for not only for you seniors, but Utah Valley as a whole?
I mean, I think it meant a lot, particularly as a university first year in the WAC. I believe, I don't know if cross country or someone had maybe won a WAC championship prior to us, but one of the first, teams to win the WAC, I mean, that was a big deal. And I think it meant a lot to us seniors because we had grinded through 3 years of not being in a, Division I accredited conference. We were in the Great West, which was kind of like a glued together conference. And so we all felt like we were good enough to win at that level, and we wanted to prove everyone that we could do that. And for me personally, it meant a lot because my senior year in high school, we got upset in the state championship. We lost by 3 points to Provo, led by underclassmen Brandon Davies and Kyle Collinsworth. And we lost by 3 points on a terribly missed call, at least in my biased opinion, at the buzzer. And so, winning a championship was something that I had always wanted, right? Like, I lost that state title by 3 points. We'd actually won some Great West championships, but winning that actual WAC championship and fighting to go play in the NCAA tournament, I mean, that's what we all dreamed of, and we all felt like we were good enough to do that. And so it was a really big deal.
You couldn't,
Sure.
just for clarification, you couldn't go to the NCAA tournament out of the Great West Conference. Is that right?
Unless you got an at-large bid,
Yeah,
right?
okay.
So there wasn't an automatic berth through the Great West tournament. It was not accredited with an automatic bid.
Okay. Maybe that's why I'm not – so I have NCAA 2K on my Xbox 360, and they wouldn't let me choose Utah Valley because Utah Valley had a coach at the time. So I just used Southern Utah, and I'm undefeated with them right now, and they won't rank me at all. So maybe that's why, because the Great West isn't, considered
Messed up.
even in the mid-major polls, they won't even rank me. So
That's crazy.
just take us through maybe some of your favorite games that year.
It's kind of funny, like that you bring this up is with all the extra time that we've had due to the virus. I mean, I've got 2 young boys and I have work, and so I'm certainly busy, but I've been watching a lot of games that season, just kind of organically. I just started rewatching games, all except for one, which is my last game as a senior. I haven't brought myself to watch that one yet, but
Is that the one? That's the one at Cal and the NIT?
NIT, yeah, that we should have won. But I mean, the first one that comes to everyone's mind is New Mexico State at our place, and
Oh, yeah.
kind of classified as the famous brawl, right? And unfortunately, that game gets a little bit of doesn't get its due diligence because the brawl happened, and that's kind of what the headline was, right? It was all over SportsCenter for the wrong reasons, unfortunately, because it was one of the most incredible games, probably the most incredible game I've ever personally played in or been a part of. They've got an unbelievable team. We're fighting. It's back and forth. Kiabi Enos gets fouled with a few seconds left on the clock, hits 3 free throws to send the game into overtime.
So clutch.
Just unbelievably clutch. And we end up winning in overtime. There's the whole aftermath of the brawl that happens, and punches were thrown. That game's probably the most recognizable game. There's a few games personally to me that also really stood out. Grand Canyon at our place. Coach Hunsaker was really hyping them, and personally was hyping their center, trying to get me to play up, talking about how much better he was than me. And I had a really good game that game against him, which was a lot of fun personally. But we ended up winning that game. There's a few other games, like at Cal State Bakersfield was our first WAC game. That game had a lot of meaning as well. We went into their place and beat them. And then obviously the NIT game was the first appearance for Utah Valley in the NIT. So I think that certainly means a lot. We played neck and neck right with them. They had several NBA guys on that team, and unfortunately ended up losing it right at the end. But, there's several games that really stood out. At Grand Canyon, I think Holton Hunsaker went off for like 35 or something. There were several really good games and really good moments that season.
So if you can, walk me through kind of your perspective of those final minutes of that New Mexico State game and kind of your view of the whole brawl and what went down.
Yeah, I mean, it's fun that we have lots of film on it, so you can kind of go back and see what happened. But the game winds down. A player in New Mexico State throws the ball at Holton Hunsaker, and immediately, like, my instincts kind of kicked in. I ran and kind of jumped in the middle and was like, "Hey, what's going on here?" And then the crowd is rushing the court in celebration. I don't know, Ty, you probably rushed the court. I don't know if you were part of that.
Yeah, it's funny because my dad told me specifically not to rush the court, and I thought,
New Mexico State
is crazy. How could you not rush the court?
Wow, did you see that?
Yeah, I got it.
Ross Miller.
What was happening?
Ross Miller took the basketball
People
and
got to
hurled it.
13 years old.
Uh-oh, we got a fight going on.
We got a fight. New Mexico State. DK Eldridge.
Are you kidding me?
This
So, I
is
mean,
ugly.
I'm
This
kind
is
of in the
nasty.
middle
Oh
of
my
it.
God.
The crowd rushed in the
What a
floor.
terrible end to a
And
great
then,
college basketball game.
there's some punches thrown
It all
and,
started.
some chaos that ensued. The funny thing is, I certainly remember all of that happening. Our coaches got us out of there quickly. He got us into the tunnel. And it's interesting because I remember going back into the tunnel, and New Mexico State went back in the tunnel. And it was a point where we would have met back there in the tunnels. And, that's not good. So we jumped into the girls' locker room, which obviously was empty, but we go in there just to get away from everything. And it was probably my favorite moment at Utah Valley as a senior. We're in the locker room, and we all kind of look around at each other, and then we just start dancing and going crazy. Like, we just beat New Mexico State. Like, what happened? We're going to win the WAC. And we just had a moment as a team that, like, you had to be there. You had to be a player to truly experience it. But we're in there dancing, hugging each other, celebrating, going crazy. And that was one of the best moments of my senior season, no doubt about it.
For sure.
What was it, how you were at Utah Valley for 4 years. Talk about, like, the loyalty there. Maybe the transfer portal obviously wasn't as big back then necessarily, but talk about the loyalty that you had from sticking it out all 4 years, knowing that the first few years at least, you might not have gone to the NCAA tournament or anything, or just talk about that loyalty that you had to that university.
Yeah, it's interesting. Not a lot of people know this. Very few actually know this. After my freshman year or my sophomore year, I actually at one point called up my dad and was like, "Hey, let's transfer, let's get out of here," because I was frustrated with a few different things. But I'll tell you why. The reason I was frustrated in the moment is actually the reason I ended up staying, was because of the coaching staff and, what they had taught us and kind of what they instilled. And each one of us kind of had a little bit of that underdog mentality, wanting to prove ourselves. And Coach Hunsaker, in full transparency, I think he's one of the top greatest college basketball coaches of all time. And playing for him, I learned more than I could have ever learned at any university. And I think part of the reason, for not wanting to ever leave is because of those bonds that you form with your teammates, right? You kind of feel like you're letting them down if you leave. We truly had kind of that brotherhood. And Holton and I particularly, we were high school rivals and ended up being teammates from freshman year to senior year. And I know if I would have left him or he would have left me, it kind of would have felt like you're abandoning your brother, right? And that's the same with my other teammates, Zach Nelson and Taylor Brown, Keavi Enos, Mitch Bernil. You can go down the line of all my teammates that I had. And, we truly had a brotherhood, a bond. And I would have felt like if I would have left, one, I'm doing myself a disservice because the coaching I was getting from Coach Hunsaker was far and away probably better than I could have gotten anywhere else. And secondly, like, I feel like I would have been letting my brothers down, right? But there were some moments, hard moments. Throughout the course of a 4-year college career, everyone has them where there's frustrations and there's moments where you're not winning, or maybe you can't see the path to the NCAA tournament, and that's tough. But I think overall, I wouldn't trade it for anything. My experience there, and I was recruited out of high school. I had a lot of other options I could have chosen. Maybe not a lot, but I had a lot of other options. I wouldn't have traded it for anything.
So what was Coach Hunsaker like after you guys did win the WAC? I'm sure that after the New Mexico State game, he probably wasn't as crazy, but I think it was Cal State Bakersfield when we officially won the title, clinched it. Was he pretty crazy in the locker room, or was he just same old Coach Hunsaker?
Yeah, I mean, Coach isn't one to jump up and down and do the whole water bottle celebration, and that's not really in his wheelhouse. But I mean, he was definitely emotional and definitely excited and ecstatic. He's more of kind of like the father figure where it's a little bit tough love at times, but deep down, the tough love is because he really, truly cares about you and really, truly loves you. And almost to the point where he would be like emotional because he was so happy for us. And it wasn't always expressed in jubilant celebration, but it was definitely expressed in the fact of, hey, we did this together, and we can be proud of what we accomplished together. So he was definitely excited, just as much as any of us.
What would you say is the greatest thing that Coach Hunsaker taught you? You said he was like a father figure to you. He taught you so many great things. So out of all of those, what would you say is the greatest thing he taught you?
Man, that's a great question, Tyler. I think there's probably too many to mention, but the first one that kind of jumps in my mind is the fact that I can achieve more than even I think I can myself. And that might sound a little funny, but it boils down to hard work, and he brought the best out of me. He would push me further than maybe I thought I could push myself. And that's translated to my professional career. It's translated to me as a father in my family. The fact that I can achieve greatness, I can achieve success if I'm willing to put the necessary work in, even if I'm not the most talented human being, because I'm not, right? There's definitely people who are more articulate than me, people who are way more talented than me. But if I put the work in, I can achieve that. And he really taught me that and instilled that. And I mean, that's one of 100 lessons that he taught me, but and continues to teach me. I mean, we still stay in touch all the time.
Sure, love that.
With regard to like Coach doing that, we've this week, last week, this week, there's been a lot of talk of the new recruits coming in for Coach Madsen. I mean, it's 5 guys that are really going to have an impact. And most of them all have a few years at Utah Valley. So maybe talk a little bit about your experience as a player. I mean, you've mentioned it already, but, being open to learning new things and having somebody push you and to be a little bit better, especially now with the transfer portal the way it is, where guys just jump if they're not getting their minutes or they're not getting the playing time or they bolt. But talk about how important it is to develop some kind of loyalty to that team, to your brothers, to the coach, to where you're like, I want to play for this guy and this team. I'm going to stick it out regardless of what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first and foremost, I think I'm as excited as anybody on paper with this recruiting class and what it looks like. I've listened to all of your podcasts and, Mark Madsen coming on here talking about it. I mean, it's a very exciting time to be a Utah Valley Wolverine and a fan of the program. But I think that this gives us the blueprint to have success, maybe not next year immediately, maybe, but in year 2 or year 3 of some of these recruits, because there's a lot to be said about team chemistry, and that takes time to develop. Working together, understanding your role within a system, how that's going to play out, understanding how to play with each other. And the more that this group stays together, right, because they've got 2 years, 3 years, the more success they're going to achieve. And they're going to achieve that success primarily through the coaching staff and kind of the hard work that they're going to put in. And Coach Madsen is doing a wonderful job. Todd Phillips, the entire coaching staff, in recruiting and player development. I mean, and how awesome is it to play for someone like Mark Madsen, who's got all that NBA experience, has had so much success as a basketball player and a coach. And so my advice to any of them would be soak in that information, buy into what you're doing, and the success will follow because the talent is definitely there, right? Even with just the returning players. I do some of the broadcast for the games on TV, so I was able to watch close up some of these guys, and I think they've got a lot of talent returning, adding the talent of this recruiting class, and that's kind of the recipe for having a lot of success. And so I hope they can buy in and really believe in what the staff's doing because, hey, something special could happen or come from it.
Do you think that this year's team could win the WAC, whether it be in March or, the regular season title? Do you think that they have the stuff to do that?
I mean, it's hard to say in April, right? But on paper,
yeah.
I mean, why not? Why not us, right? I mean, why does it have to be New Mexico State? Why, let's go out and make it happen. I say yes.
Most definitely.
I think it's all about, like you said, it's all about that chemistry. I mean, they've got Brandon Averett, Trey Woodbury, JJ coming back that played last year that are all great players in there, talented players. And then they've got Fardaws, who sat out a year due to transfer. Colby Leafson sat out the second half, due to transfer. I mean, I think it goes back to something you said about you may not have the most talent or the best athletes or the best shooters, but it's can they play together as a team? I mean, that's in my opinion from playing ball and stuff like that, kind of like what you said, that's the recipe for success. If you can play together as a team, that's when you're going to find most of your success on the basketball floor.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Something I'll always remember, the coach from Cal, I'm spacing on his name right now, but
was it
after
Mike
we finished that
point?
I want to say yes. I think it is. I think it was Mike Montgomery. I'd have to double check that. But I'll never forget what he said after the game to me. And I think he said actually in his press conference as well. He said, because obviously, I mean, they're Pac-12, right? So they can recruit maybe a higher caliber athlete at times, right? He said, if I could get my team to execute at the level that you guys execute at Utah Valley, we'd be in the running for a national title. And that's a compliment to us as a team because we were bought in. I mean, the system, that's Coach Hunsaker's system, which has proven to have success, but we didn't care. We didn't care if Holton scored 30 points one night and, Zach only scored 4, or if I only scored 2 and Kiavi scored 30. I mean, we didn't care who was putting up the numbers. We cared about wins, right? And we executed at an extremely high level, and that takes a lot of time. And, Coach Madsen doesn't run maybe as strict of a system, and today's game has maybe shifted a little bit, where the three-pointers and a little more up and down than maybe the style play that we had. But that always stuck with me, right? If you could get them to execute at that level, we would compete for a national title. And I think that might be what it takes to your point, Tyler, to win the WAC is, can these guys buy in? Can they have the chemistry to execute at the level necessary to win a championship?
Tyler, who have we talked about that does the exact same thing that's won WAC championship after WAC championship the last, 4 or 5 years? But they don't care who scores. They just want to win.
Yep. And New Mexico State fans, over at WAC Hoops Digest, they grill us every year because we never have a WAC Player of the Year. They never have one guy. They have a system of guys that are able to buy in, and they say, you know what, it's any guy on a given night. They buy in, and that's what has led to a lot of success for them. So it's like, would you rather be, a third or fourth place team and have one really good player? Or would you rather have the best team and a group of guys that are all buying in and knows that any one of those guys can step up on any given night? So,
yeah,
it'll be interesting to see how this group gels and kind of with this recruiting class. Ben, what do you think excites you the most about this class? Like, is there one thing in particular that makes you go, wow, this is really a terrific class.
Yeah, I mean, on paper, the first thing that stands out to me is the word versatility, right? I mean, people that can play multiple positions, people, and I think shooting is another word that stands out. I feel like we've got a lot of shooters coming back, but people that can fill in and shoot the ball at a high level. But when you've got, I mean, Coach, said it on your guys' podcast, I believe. He can go with two bigs in a rotation. He can play, Cole Evans could play the 3 or the 4, and you can put another big in. You could play different people at different positions, and that creates mismatches and makes it very challenging for your opponent. And so just the versatility that this team's going to have and what that looks like, I think is going to give them a lot of options in how they can attack and find that success. So, I mean, it's exciting. This is as excited as I've been in a while in terms of a recruiting class, and hats off to the coaching staff and what they've been able to do. Absolutely.
We got to kind of temper our emotions a little bit with it, though, because of this. I don't want to say stupid virus because I don't want to sound insensitive, but it just like we hope that basketball and sports are gonna be back. It's just like we said, there's excitement there surrounding it. I mean, and Madsen did it again this year, where he beat Mark Pope out for a recruit. He did it last year with Trey Woodbury from UNLV, and this year he did it with Evan Cole from Georgia Tech. So I mean, the guy knows how to recruit, and we see it. Here's the crazy thing, and you probably heard it in the other podcast that I mentioned. He did all this recruiting like we're doing with Zoom calls. He didn't have guys on campus. He didn't go to guys' houses. He did it all through here. And to pull the kind of recruits that he did, I mean, I'm waiting. I want to see what he can do when he can actually go out and talk to guys.
Yeah.
So
yeah, for sure.
I don't know.
And Kyle, I'm going to speak for Micah right here, and I'm going to be optimistic and say that we are going to have a season. I saw a tweet earlier today that said that 99% of athletic directors, of FBS athletic directors, they think that college football is going to happen because it's too big of a moneymaker, really. And so if they're going to make college football happen, you better believe they're going to make college basketball happen.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we saw a tweet tonight. I think he's one of the associate athletic directors at California Baptist, but I guess California Baptist has a plan in place for their campus to open up for the fall semester.
Wow.
You're a business guy. You're dealing with working from home and things like that. What do you think is important to getting not just sports, but maybe life kind of back to some sort of normalcy?
Yes, we need sports. I don't know. I mean, there's much smarter people than me making those kind of decisions. I think we're trending in the right direction based off of kind of the data that I've seen. But I think the biggest thing is people need to feel safe, right? They need to feel that comfortable and safe. And again, I'm not a scientist. I don't know if warmer weather, helps to eliminate the virus. A vaccination, how far progressed is that? But I think as long as people can feel safe and confident, then we can start to return back to normal. And what does sports look like in that scenario? I don't know. I mean, I'm all for if 0 fans included is the only route to progress in order to bring sports back, then I say let's do it. No fans. That's hard because I think fans make the game. As a player, playing in a completely empty stadium just would seem bizarre, right? But at the same time, as a player, you want to play and you want to compete, right? And if the only way you can do that is with no fans, then I think you're saying let's go and make it happen. So I don't know. I don't know exactly what it's going to take, but I hope that we can get it figured out and return to some normalcy at some point. I feel for everyone in this economic environment that's lost their job. That's tough. If you're in the hospitality industry, I mean, you're really struggling. But I would hope, I mean, there's some people that are a lot smarter than me that hopefully we can get this figured out, right? And get things back to somewhat of a normal environment.
Do you think that if there weren't any fans, how much different do you think the actions and the vocabulary of coaches on the sidelines might change a little bit?
A lot. I mean, the NBA, they might have to mute everything. I don't know. If we're going to hear what the players are saying and the coaches, they might not be able to broadcast that. But, I mean, it's interesting, right, to even just think about. I don't know what that would look like, but I'm willing to find out if that's the only way.
Yeah.
For sure. Kind of a question that I've been wanting to ask, and that is, you were an assistant the season after you graduated, you know, some kind of an assistant to Coach Hunsaker. So, how did that kind of happen, and what was that experience like for you?
Yeah, that's kind of funny how that happened. So, I had the dream my entire life of playing professional basketball. That was always my goal. And after my senior season, I signed a contract to go play in the Netherlands, which was a huge life accomplishment for me. You know, someone would actually pay me to go play basketball. And so I went over to the Netherlands and I played my first season. Unfortunately, I had a broken bone in my ankle, and it was really bothering me, and it got worse and worse and worse. And my ankle was just messed up, and I couldn't play. I had hurt it in the summer, and essentially I had broken my ankle in the summer in training, and I tried to play through it, and it didn't work out. And so I ended up coming back, and I had to have surgery. The recovery was about 8 to 9 months. It was a pretty bad broken ankle that I had. So it's kind of funny how it all worked out. I'm at home recovering from my ankle surgery, and Coach Hunsaker calls me and says, "Ben, I need you to come down to practice. Be down here at this time." I said, "Okay." So I go and I watch the entire practice, and I'm just thinking, I'm a spectator. This is great, you know. And he pulls me into his office and he says, "Ben, I need you to come be an assistant coach." And I said, "Okay, let's make it happen." So the first part of the year I was on crutches, so my mobility was limited. But I mean, it was awesome. It was hard to shift from being a player to a coach. There were some hard times, but it was kind of an opportunity that just came my way, and I jumped on it full bore and was an assistant coach for Coach Hunsaker's final season, which was really special to be a part of his staff, kind of in his last season.
For sure.
Yeah, I don't know. That's an interesting story. I hate how injuries derail, opportunities. I mean,
Yeah.
I had an arm. I was a left-handed pitcher, injured my arm my senior year, and things never worked out again. So it's a little disappointing. I mean, it happens, but yeah.
At least I got to fulfill my lifelong dream. I got paid and was able to play and play professional basketball, which was a huge blessing.
For sure. Now that I actually think about it, I do remember you being on crutches at the start of the season. Now that you mention it, I actually do remember that. And I don't think I ever found out why. I don't think I did, or maybe I did and I forgot, but I don't think I ever knew why. So I was kind of like, why is he on crutches? That's so weird. But now I have that closure. So
there it is.
I didn't get to pay attention that close because I didn't get to cover men's basketball that year. That was my first year with the review, and I had to start with the women's team. So I didn't see you on crutches. What do you think of the fact that, let's get back to recruiting just real quick here, that Mark Madsen was able to pull a guy like Evan Cole from Georgia Tech, who had offers to Ohio State and BYU. And I mean, some people aren't real high on that, or they don't think he had all the offers, but he was pretty adamant when we talked to him the other day that he had his phone blown up. But what does it say about Mark Madsen's ability to recruit that he can bring in a guy like Evan Cole, who had all those other offers.
I mean, it says a lot, right, about who Mark is as a person and how he's able to connect with these athletes. I firmly believe that he had all of those offers. I mean, watching his tape, you can see his talent and his ability. And the big thing that I take, right, I don't want to speak for Evan. I don't know what fully went into his decision-making process, but what I would imagine is the fact that he wanted a coach and a system, a coach that he believed in, and a system where he could progress his game and kind of take that next step to being more of a featured part of a team. And, I think he felt comfortable that, UVU was going to provide that for him. And so that speaks a lot. As a player, you're kind of giving, I don't know the analogy that you want to say, but you're kind of saying to this coach, hey, I believe in you. I'm going to come and kind of give you the keys to the car and hope that you can drive me to the destination that I want to get. And I'm going to have to put in all the work to get there. But it's a lot, right? And so it says a lot about this staff that he was able to buy in, and a lot of the other recruits to give, hand it over to them and say, hey, I'm going to give you everything I got. Let's go make this happen together. And so, I mean, it's a huge win. I think he's going to be a very, very big piece of the program next year. And I think he's going to have a lot of success here in Orem. And a lot of it has to do with how you feel comfortably, right? I mean, when I went through the recruiting process, it wasn't always necessarily the name of the program. And sometimes it is for certain people, right? It's like, hey, I want to go to Duke or North Carolina no matter what. And Zion Williamson could go anywhere and have that success. But I wanted to go somewhere where I felt comfortable that the coach was going to put me in a situation to be successful, where I could, really help a team to win. And that's why I chose Utah Valley, is because I knew I could start for 4 years. I started every game for 4 years and play right away and help build a program. But more importantly, I knew that Coach Hunsaker was going to put me in a position to be successful. And I believe Evan felt that with Coach Madsen and the rest of the staff, that he would be successful under their tutelage and kind of the other pieces that are already in place. So it says a lot. I mean, I think it's only going to get better from here. They've already proven that they can go out and get those type of recruits, and it's a huge step in the right direction.
I wish that recruits had more of that mentality, of going in and, where can I make an impact? Where will I have a fit? Because I think that that's truly where you see really good teams, make it to the tournament, and make things happen, as they get these recruits who come and they buy in. They weren't trying to go play for the flashy programs, or the big names. They were going to go somewhere where it was a good fit, where they would be embraced and where they could shine, And so I wish that more recruits would have that mentality, especially with kind of today's game.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's hard. Like, there's a big thing when this generation of, hey, I'm going to post on social media and do a whole reveal, and you want your family and your friends to be like, oh, Tyler's going to Duke. This is amazing, right? Even if you're going to sit on the bench and not have success. And I would hope that they could take a step back and say, well, I could go to Utah Valley or wherever and be able to have that success. I think that's spot on, Tyler.
Well, that is former UVU men's basketball player Ben Aird, who, I mean, unfortunately, what was it, 2 years ago you had your single-season block record shattered by AK, and then Iman Olojupoki shattered AK's record this year. So technically now you're third in block shots in a single season.
I still have some records to be broken that I'm still holding. Hopefully, and there's no doubt that someone will come in and break them. That's what you want. I mean, I think as an alumni, I want people to break my records and anyone else's records, because that means as a program we're getting where we want to be. But I'm holding on to a few of them still, so hopefully I can.
Well, considering you were there for 4 years, you probably will hold on to some of them. So
yeah.
Anyway, that's Ben Aird. For Tyler and I, follow us on Twitter. You see our handles on the screen, or follow us, One Team All Green. Subscribe to our page. Give it a like, comment, whatever you want. Tyler, give him your signature sound off.
Hey, big shout out to Big Ben for coming on. Big Ben Aird, one of the best Wolverines of all time, if you ask me. Just saying, I've seen a lot of great Wolverines, but I don't think any as great as him. So with that said, go Wolverines, baby, always.
Have a nice night, everybody.
We'll be right back.